I wasn't sure there was going to be a sparring match agreement that will spar for a while. I wasn't sure. I was honest about it. That's why he said it's going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was an understanding that, we'll play a little bit and then we'll get a little more and, whatever. So that was part of it.
Acknowledge Jake has had double jaw surgery, 4 plates, 8 screws in his face, and everybody is just kind of breezing past that like it's no big deal. But I'm looking further into this because that's no easy surgery, and I'm starting to ask the question, is this the beginning of the end of Jake Paul's boxing career?
As his brother, I was just shocked. I'm in the hospital with the guy, and he's like, yo, can you make this TikTok? Can you film this for me? He's like laughing and having a good time.
Doesn't have any agenda against Anthony Joshua, because it feels to me like that fight, I before the fight, I was refusing to accept the principle that this fight could be scripted.
Boxing world erupted with outrage, with some fans even claiming Anthony Joshua should be held accountable for the damage inflicted on Jake Paul inside the ring. Experts voiced strong criticism after Jake suffered severe injuries, including jaw fractures that required surgery and metal screws. Many condemned the matchup as dangerously mismatched, arguing that Joshua's power and aggression cross a line of what was reasonably safe. The extent of the injuries shocked fans and professionals alike, reigniting debate over fighters' safety, responsibility, and proper matchmaking in high-profile bouts.
Away from the power, you could call it running, and you'll be right. You can also say it's smart for a guy of Jake's size and understanding that AJ is a fucking monster. It's also smart to fight that way. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It was not.
Analyst Brian Campbell and Shaka Majwi delivered a detailed breakdown of Jake Paul's fight against Anthony Joshua, focusing on strategy and the physical toll of the bout. They explained that Joshua's power caused significant damage, ultimately forcing Jake to undergo jaw surgery. To survive, Paul relied heavily on movement, constantly circling the ring to avoid being trapped against the ropes. While this approach lacked aggression, it allowed him to last longer than many expected against such a dangerous opponent. Campbell and Majwi noted that Jake's emphasis on mobility and ring awareness helped conserve energy and limit damage, but Joshua's overwhelming strength still left visible injuries. Their analysis highlighted the value of defensive planning in boxing, while underscoring the serious risks of mismatched, high-stakes fights.
This be the end for him in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring?
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva and Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
Former UFC champion Michael Bisping reacted strongly to Jake Paul's crushing loss, describing Anthony Joshua's performance as a masterclass in professional boxing. Bisping emphasized how completely outmatched Paul was, pointing to precision, timing, and power behind Joshua's punches. AJ's combinations and uppercuts left Paul with little room to escape, exposing flaws in both his defense and overall strategy. Bisping explained that the broken jaw and sustained punishment would result of facing a much bigger, stronger, and more skilled opponent, something Paul had never encountered at this level. He added that confidence and promotional hype could not prepare Jake for the technical and physical realities of elite heavyweight boxing. While Paul managed to survive several rounds, Joshua's dominance made the skill gap unmistakably clear. Bisping concluded that the fight served as a harsh lesson in preparation, respect, and the true demands of the sport.
Opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing. It's not MMA, as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round, he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, then a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
Following the blockbuster bout, reports revealed that both Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua earned approximately $92 million each, making it one of the highest paying fights ever streamed globally on Netflix. However, Joshua's earnings were heavily impacted by taxation. As a UK resident fighting in the United States, he faced both US federal taxes and UK international tax obligations, potentially reducing his take-home pay by nearly $66 million. As a result, his actual earnings were far lower than the headline figure suggested. Jake Paul, by contrast, did not face the same international tax burden, allowing him to retain a significantly larger portion of his purse despite losing the fight. The situation highlighted how taxation can dramatically affect international boxing payouts and reminded fans that reported earnings often differ greatly from what fighters ultimately receive.
Has to pay, as you see here, a whopping $43 million. $43 million of his $92 million purse. That means Anthony Joshua was left with $49 million. Right? Now, he also has to pay, I believe, 10% of that to his promoter, Matchroom CEO and promoter Eddie Hearn.
Dominic Engel offered a brutally honest assessment of Jake Paul's broken jaw fight against Anthony Joshua. He explained that Jake's strategy focused on avoidance rather than trading punches, making it difficult for Joshua to trap him effectively. Although Paul absorbed a heavy right hand, he showed resilience by not visibly reacting. Engel noted, however, that Joshua never needed to push at full intensity, as an all-out assault was unnecessary in an 8-round fight against a less experienced opponent. Engel compared performance to bouts where elite fighters adjust their output based on a level of competition, referencing Tyson Fury as an example. He stressed that fighters often perform only at the level required to control the fight. When Joshua landed clean shots, Paul felt the power, but overall, Jake managed to survive without being placed in extreme danger, highlighting both his defensive awareness and Joshua's measured control.
Stand and fight. And AJ is not the best at closing people off, and it's hard chasing somebody down who don't want to engage. And then he tagged him every now and again. So
does it look bad on him because there was one right hook that he took was a serious shot, but obviously he didn't flinch from it. But the fact
not really, because you'll take into consideration that you can get. There'll be no way. Well, Anthony Joshua thought, if he hits me, there's a possibility he's going to hurt me. And I felt a couple of shots early on in the fight. There's no way Jake Paul at the level he's at, and who he's boxed and what he's done, that he's, and it's like AJ, like you say, he's got to have completely gone and be punch drunk for Jake Paul to beat him. After the last fight against Dubois, people think, well, his jaw's gone there, he can't take a shot. Of course he can take a shot. And it's weighing up the opposition, and he weighed up the opposition. And he's not going to be training like he trained for Usyk or for the big fights. He won't do that because they can't get motivated enough to do it. They'll do enough to do the rounds. What was it, an 8-rounder?
Yeah.
So, same again. So he did enough. He never looked in any trouble. It didn't look great, but Tyson Fury didn't look great against Ngannou, did he? But who did he box after Ngannou?
Was it Usyk?
Exactly. Yeah. But you would have never thought, looking at the performance against Ngannou with Tyson, you would never have thought that he put in the performance he did against Usyk.
So you think it's more of a case of you kind of, no matter how good you are and how much you train, if the opposition isn't great, you sometimes
you're going to box at the level of the opponent because the opponent makes you fight at that level.
That's quite a fair.
So, but when AJ did do what he got to and manages to...
Analysts emphasize that surviving against a fighter of Anthony Joshua's caliber requires real courage and resilience, while also serving as a reminder of boxing's inherent dangers. The fight proved that hype alone cannot prepare someone for elite-level competition. Emotions intensified when Jake Paul's mother publicly lashed out after the bout, reportedly threatening both Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn. She expressed anger toward Hearn, saying she wanted to confront him first for smiling while Jake was taking punishment. She also criticized Joshua and Hearn for not stopping the fight sooner, believing her son endured unnecessary damage. Her reaction, while extreme, reflected the deep emotional toll and genuine safety concerns surrounding Jake's injuries. Fans and analysts describe her response as understandable given the brutal nature of the fight.
Eddie Hearn, for instance. Yeah.
Why? Why Eddie Hearn?
Because I don't like his smug face.
You don't like his smug face?
No. Literally thinks he's better than everybody in the world.
Shit-eating grin. I said the exact...
Jake's over there, struggling, and he's sitting over there smiling like the cat who swallowed the canary. Guess what? Did he fucking get in the ring?
Do you think he was happy with what happened to Jake?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, my God.
Now, this is coming from a mother, too, guys. So I just want y'all to understand it. This is a mom. But at the end of the day, it's his job to laugh. Because, hell, I was laughing at Jake Paul. I can't even lie. I'm not a big Jake Paul fan. But, part of the process. We got to report on this stuff. But Mama Paul, hella mad.
God, and that's sickening to me. It's sick. I don't like it. Even Anthony Joshua had some class and, apologized to me.
Did he really?
Yeah. He worked his way through the crowd and came up to me and said, Mom, it's just boxing.
In the aftermath, attention shifted to Logan Paul, who appeared to confront and intimidate Anthony Joshua outside the ring. At the same time, footage emerged of Jake Paul in a hospital, visibly injured and recovering from a knockout that left his jaw fractured. The contrast between Logan's confident stance and Jake's vulnerable condition highlighted the harsh reality of facing an elite heavyweight. While Logan's actions drew headlines, many observers noted that the real story remained Jake's suffering and the physical toll the fight had taken on him.
I say AJ fighting Logan Paul would be more of a mismatch than Jake Paul. You know what I mean? Because at least Jake Paul has taken boxing or has trained with real boxing trainers and real boxes. Whereas Logan Paul, he did that exhibition with Floyd, and Floyd's a little guy. Not saying a little guy can't thump, because Floyd really gave him some two pieces with no sides, right? But at the same time, you take his friend, Floyd's friend, Anthony Joshua, and get hit by him and see what happens. The same thing. Probably worse, because I think Logan, he's a little taller than Jake. And because he's a little taller than Jake, he may think he's a little stronger than Jake, which I don't know which one's true or not. I don't think it makes a difference. But because he may feel that way, he may want to go in there and try to bang it out with AJ. And if that happens, it's going to be a lot quicker. See, that 6 rounds it took AJ to finally catch Jake. It took that way because Jake was on that bicycle, moving, being elusive, trying to come in and then come out. He tried to do a very poor man's Alexander Usyk, right? And it didn't work for him. Logan ain't going to do that. Logan's going to come in throwing punches and bunches like he did with Floyd, trying to get him in there and, do all this stuff. And what's going to happen as soon as AJ lines him up, sets his punch, he's going to hit Jake and he's going to break Jake down, and he may break his jaw or face or orbital bone or something. Nose. Something is going to be broken when it.
Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi delivered a blunt and unfiltered breakdown of Jake Paul's fight against Anthony Joshua, stressing how devastating the bout ultimately was. They pointed to severe injuries, including a jaw broken in 2 places and lost teeth, as evidence of the danger Paul faced against a world-class heavyweight. Both analysts explained that Joshua's power and accuracy left Jake with little margin for error, exposing defensive limitations. Their assessment served as a stark warning about the risks of stepping into the ring against elite opposition without the necessary experience, reinforcing the brutal reality Paul endured.
Ngannou, he's got balls. Ngannou's got balls, man. He went out there and he tried to fight, tried to win. Jake Paul didn't try to win at any point during the fight. He was just trying to survive. And I think that's actually ultimately going to hurt him with boxing fans.
Yeah, what do you think, Paulie? I mean, you talked about the in and out kind of style, kind of hits and runs, and you said that A, it runs out your legs. He was exhausted a couple rounds into the fight, and B, it only saved him for so long.
He doesn't have the boxing skills to box on the move anyway. Once I saw the big ring, I knew he was going to run for his life. When you're that much of a novice, which obviously it's not even an insult to him, it's just lack of experience. But when you're that much of a novice, you either know how to run for your life or fight all out. You don't have that in between yet. You haven't developed enough of that in between boxing acumen to really pull that off. And so what ends up happening? You're either going to fight your ass off and you'll last a minute. Chris, you're being generous. Round 2, he would have got knocked out in round 1 if he would have fought. But at least he would have fought. He would have got the respect of the people and more importantly, the boxing community instead of these clowns that follow him and are still defending him. Now what happens is you didn't get any respect as a fighter. You didn't get any respect as a fighter because you didn't try to fight at all. If he would have, I was watching that through 2-3 rounds. I'm thinking to myself, this guy would do this for 8 rounds if he can. If he can do this for 8 rounds, absolutely not fight at all, absolutely not engage a single time in 8 rounds, he will actually do this. And he'll do it shamelessly. And that's the problem. That's the problem. The shamelessness of his approach to the fight. You're going to be a fighter. Then don't make an ass out of the whole sport, out of the whole business, and out of yourself first and foremost. Because in the end, what happens? You got his jaw broke anyway. So what ends up happening? What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get hurt. You're going to get knocked out. You got hurt and you got knocked out anyway. But you just prolonged the inevitable, and you got no respect out of it now. Because nobody's respecting that kind of performance. Nobody's respecting a performance where you were totally content to steal money from everyone by running for your life for 8 rounds. And if you could have not engaged a single time in 8 rounds, that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to pull that.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned. Until next time.